to call to order the January 13th. And it came up, since we have some military people, we all love acronyms, but the second meeting of our RFAC, how about that? Residential Financial Advisory Committee, RFAC. So unfortunately, we're missing two members. Today we're missing Ron and we're missing Alana. So in that case, we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, you
We
do.
do? We four?
You need, yeah, 6 members.
Yeah, we got quorum.
Okay, all right, as I was. Okay, so first of all, if you would please, Rebecca, go ahead and call our roll.
Sure. Ronald L. Siganek,
He is absent, Ron's not here.
John S. Hanzak,
Here.
John J. Hayes.
Here.
Rebecca Hollis, here. Silvana Ariel. Rick.
He's absent, right? And I am here.
Okay, Rick Shaw.
All right. Okay, I did get an agenda put out, and if you'd like to just take a look at that, if you haven't had a minute, and if we could have a motion to approve that, we'll be able to move on. Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay, so motion passes 4-0. Next item is the approval of the December 10th meeting minutes, which were nicely taken by Rebecca, thank you. Has anyone had a chance to look at that? And are there any questions, corrections, additions, deletions that anybody would like to see made to that? It was a somewhat preliminary meeting, so not a lot of real substance there.
I'll make a motion, we accept
All right,
the meeting minutes.
second that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, motion passes. Okay. All right. Third item there. First of all, welcome. Well, we have city council members, so citizens, city council members. I forget, what is your name, sir?
Bill?
Bill, last name?
Lusk.
Bill Lusk. Okay, thank you for being here and being a part of this today. Okay. First meeting, as we know, we went over sunshine rules, and we were given quite a bit of information by the city. Thank you, Lynn, and to your folks for putting that out to us. And Vice Mayor Gunn went over the city strategic plan with us to kind of set us up for what our accomplishments are, or what our goals are. We also looked at the charter as given to us and tried to put that into perspective as to how that's going to guide what we do during the course of the next 3 months. So then fourth, I put down a budget overview, and we tasked each other to take a look at all of this information that was given to us. Did everyone get a chance to do that to the degree that you'd like to? Okay. I'll make a few comments and then please do the same. Started out, this report here, of course, is really helpful. The November, didn't have it at the time, that's September, but the points there are pretty much the same. We learned, of course, that there are 3 basic funds we're dealing with: the general fund, the capital improvement fund, and the marina fund. And if you go over to the last page, either on November's or December's, under the cash and investment, I think that gives us a pretty clear picture of what we're looking at: the amount in the general fund, the amount in the capital improvement fund, and then in the marina fund, and then the total, as you see, $5,362,275. If we all took the time, and I did, to go through everything in this book, I kind of came to a conclusion that I think will drive what we're trying to do. We all saw, and the form that is really, or the page that's very helpful, is the graph under tab 4, where it has City of Bel Air Beach, the general fund, where the money comes from, nice pie chart, and then where the money goes on the second page there. And what I found through looking at the overview and then looking through all the detailed reports that accompany it, I found myself with a sense of satisfaction as far as the way the city is doing business. I mean, I don't see anything odd in there. Most of our costs seem to be fixed. For the most part, our income appears to be fixed, with the exception that money is transferred back and forth from the general fund, from the capital improvement fund, to fund the major items that come up. So I'm knowing Lynn, I'm sure that he pays close attention to all the little items as far as reviewing copier contracts and all those small numbers that all add up to a larger number, but things that really come under his purview as city manager. So I was left with the basic impression, or not impression, but the sense that where we need to go is very well spelled out or delineated here in this foldout, which we have, which talks about all the capital improvements that the city is looking at and the city council is reviewing. Does everyone know the form I'm talking about? Yeah.
Tab 3.
Right. Because if you go through and you look at the detailed budget, money is transferred from reserves, in and out of reserves at various periods. Money comes in at different times of the year with grant money, with fees, things of that nature. So I'm assuming that the city manager has the authority to manage that as he sees fit in order to make sure there's enough money to go around. So what are we really trying to identify? We have, of course, we have the three funds, and we have the Marina Fund, the General Fund, the Capital Improvement Fund. And as is laid out in the Capital Improvement Fund, that seems to be the major item for us to focus on. Would you agree with that assessment or summary?
Yes.
You know, we can certainly look at it, we'll look at ways to raise money. Things such as whether it be boat slips or whether it be utilization of property, things of that nature. That's all important, but they're smaller numbers, it seems to me. What I think we really need to grasp a hold of is how are we going to, looking at the different years, I think we're, and Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere between a $250,000 and a $350,000 deficit, if you will, that has to be adjusted to pay for capital improvements. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, last year it was 309, this year it's 412.
Right.
And a lot of that adjustment depends on the cost that the project bids out as. Because you're just taking, what we utilize to create the budget is engineers' estimates on the estimate that they're telling us that, as an example, that it's gonna cost. But the project may be bid, when it's bid, it may come in at a lower number. Good example, most recent, 3rd through 6th Street was bid at $328, and it's gonna end up about $286. So we've
So they
got,
went high in their bid,
well, they went, no.
Estimate, right?
or their, yes, in their estimate, they were high.
Well, that was a little higher, but the actual bid was $328. But
Okay.
the contractor, as has been the case in a lot of things, you have to put money in there in case of contingencies, just in case something happens.
Right.
But we've been able to, through monitoring the contractor, not spend that contingency and do some cost savings on some other things, because they don't maybe tear up somebody's driveway or sprinkler system, because there's money set in the contract to repair that. So, but that's just an example of the most recent one.
Okay. So in 2019, we transferred 307,000.
Right.
We use even numbers here, 8,000, and as you said, this year, looking at $412,000 to basically to balance the budget. So if we look at where our reserves are and looking at the out years that you've, and these are all even numbers, and that's okay for planning purposes. It's the best WAG you have, and we'll sort it out as we get there. We need to come up with some pretty significant money, is the picture that I'm left with. big numbers, things that are probably outside of anything we can do with the marina. It may involve dealing with the properties, and I'm not sure, the various properties we have that I've heard talk here and there about possibly selling. Grants, and I'm not familiar with what grants we're necessarily going after, but it seems to me we're looking at some big numbers here, so we're gonna have to think on a global scale rather than the type of simpler things we're used to dealing with. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in here, and Lynn can probably help with this. When I look at the proposed budget for 2019, 2020, the 412,000 that's going to be, it's coming from the general fund, correct? And it's earmarked for over to the capital improvement fund.
Right.
Is the 412 though arrived at as a number that's needed? Because I can't reconcile it to the capital improvement, or is it just falling out in the budget if we keep ourselves at the 2.03 mils based on assessed values?
Right, it's actually, that number is a plug number to fill the budget.
Okay.
If we didn't have capital projects, if you look at, let me see, if you look at the report I gave you in November, that's probably an easier place to say it. Second page. When you look at capital projects, you may think it's just one project, but it's not. Our capital project, if you look at the second column here on the right, our capital project number for this year is $791,500. That doesn't mean that we're spending it, we're putting it into a reserve, because as an example, at some point in time, we're gonna have to replace the roof here.
Right.
So instead of taking a hit in a specific year, we're saving for it. The capital project for stormwater this year is $400,000. So, and then we've got a lot larger number this year for street resurfacing. And the reason for that was the undergrounding project.
How you doing? Good.
Those streets were delayed in doing anything to them because of the undergrounding project. So we budgeted $120,000 to start repaving those streets, because they've kind of been on the back burner, because there's no sense shooting under the road, doing this, doing that, cutting the road up, and then paving it while you're doing it, and then repaving it later. So there's kind of a method to that. So that number is the plug for, we're actually projected to have about $300,000 of the operating revenue to cover the capital fund projects.
The gap between 412 and 791.
Right.
I get that. May I ask, the underground utility number that was 173,000 in that first column that you're referring to?
Right.
Is that the undergrounding that residents are paying? Okay,
Yeah, we have to
so there's
show
a
it.
revenue item.
Yeah, it's a wash.
Yeah, okay.
It's just, we have to show, when we got the loan funds in 2018, we got them just before the end of the fiscal year. We had to show that as a revenue in the city and roll it over because of the project for the next year, for the undergrounding.
So the big picture again would be that you want to put $791,000 into the capital improvement fund
Right,
and spend what you may need out of this, but you're budgeting, you only have room in your budget to transfer over 412. So that's like a $380,000 shortfall.
no,
Am I right?
that's not the shortfall. The shortfall is the 412. The 380 is the gross. That's why you're transferring out of the reserves the 412 to balance the budget.
Okay.
So what you would do to.
What's the 791 then, Lynn?
That's the overall capital funds projects. And some of those are savings accounts, well, a good portion of them are.
Well, okay, where does that money come from then?
It comes from the operating funds, the taxes, the income that comes in, the operating revenue, and some of it comes from the reserves if we need it. Which that 412,000 is from the reserves, it's not from,
I get that, yeah,
okay.
I get that. But again, and maybe I'm not seeing it right away, but do I see something in the budget that shows me where the 380,000 is? That we're sure, I see 412 and then I see 791, help me reconcile that.
Well, that 790 is, it's in the budget as a gross number.
Where do I see it in the budget?
You mean, oh, you're asking for a specific line? No, you're not gonna see
So it's
that.
just out of the general cash flow.
Right.
That's receipts for the year.
Right, right. As an example, go down here to, I gave you this page, I think. It says Bellar Beach, budget summary. I think I pulled that page, that may be it right there that you're looking at. And down at the bottom, you'll see that capital fund project. Do you see that? The highlighted one? It's gotta be in your budget book. I think I.
Oh, here, I've got the transfers out, yeah, right here,
Okay.
780.
So the capital improvements for next year are 700, or this year, I should say, 791,500. So right here, that number is right there.
Right,
About your.
yeah, I got it now. Okay, so I'll go on to the next question, Lynn. If I look at the well, I'm not sure, it's 780 here, but you're
791 here.
791. Oh, maybe I have an old one. But, okay, it's 791. When I go to this tab 3 that we first received, and I look at the column for 2019-20, I see a requirement of 1,166,000. Is that a good number to work with, or
1,000,001.
at the bottom?
Okay, this was the original budget submission, but some of that stuff fell out of there. As an example, the very first thing fell out of there. The generator,
Okay,
it fell out. The 450 went to 400, so and then some other things probably dropped along the way. So, Bayside Park, that dropped.
okay. So is this a schedule I shouldn't rely on?
Not at this point, because really how that was set up, it's a tool for us to decide on the budget, what the priorities are. The city council, if you look in this column right here, in this column,
Right,
the city council
I
at
see
one
the
point in
priorities.
time did a rating system, each individual, and we took the averages and then we ranked them by number. And we'll be updating this for the new budget because some of this stuff dropped out.
okay, so.
What this is a compilation of every single capital project that's in our budget.
The wish list?
Well, it's not a wish list.
So again, Lynn, the 791 that's on this schedule as of November 19th, or
Right.
November 2019, that is the number that you would like to see funded to cover all these items, understanding that some of them haven't been bid out, you don't know what the
Right.
bottom cost of, that would be the 791. I come over to the budget, and it has 780,600. Those are the,
In the capital?
no, that's transfers out to the capital projects fund.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The balanced budget, which is revenues 2,704,000,
Well, we tried to-
expenditures 2,704,000, The expenditures have 780,000 transferring out to the capital projects fund.
Yeah, let me try to, I may need the account to explain that better, but that is a, how do I say it? As the accountant explained it to me, it's a plug number that they put in there. It's a difference of the revenues and the
Yep.
expenses. So that number is not that number. That number is down here. You're looking at two different numbers. But I'll get you a clarification on that number. From the,
So, okay, then let me ask it a different way, Lynn. If the 791,500 is what you want in this next fiscal year, going into reserves for these capital projects,
no, it's not going into reserves, it's going into the operating budget. Capital funds operating,
okay, capital funds operating
Yeah.
budget. Okay, I get that. Okay, 791.
right.
Is the 780 though available from the budget to cover that?
No, it's short $412,000.
Okay, which is on, oh, I see that right here. Okay. I get it now.
And that number, I think it's fair to say, if I may add, John, is gonna be consistent, plus or minus $100,000 for the next few years.
It
That's gonna
really,
be kind of the deficit, as money's gonna have to be taken out of reserves to fund these projects.
between $300,000 and
Right,
$400,000.
that's what I'm saying.
So I'd like to ask a bigger picture
Yeah.
question then.
Got it.
Then this work that was done, and I think there's
Yeah.
been exceptional work done by this city. I want to start out that way
Yeah.
with all of this. Is this a list of items that need to be done in the city that you want, that will, it's like a moving target every single year it should be looked at?
That's what it's for, and it's to prioritize them.
Right.
How it
Okay.
was developed was mainly to prioritize what's important. As an example, you may look at, tennis courts or Bayside Park or those. Those are lower priorities in the scheme of things.
I get it.
So you have to take the funds that you have based on the reserve. As an example, the reserve that was projected in last year's budget was not utilized because we were able to maintain our operating budget at a lower level. So that money basically got put back in the reserve. So our reserve was gonna drop to, Glenn can probably help me with this, I got so many numbers in my head. But it was gonna drop to like 1.1 million, and now it's gonna stay at 1.4, because we didn't use that.
Couple projects
Wasn't that about
probably.
right?
Came in under budget.
Yeah. So, we had an operating budget, I think it was 2.6, and we ended up actually spending
2.4.
2.3 or something like that.
Okay, so tell me again what happens to that surplus funds? Is that a good,
Yeah, it goes
Definitely.
back in the reserve. It's like a,
the general fund reserve or the capital improvement fund reserve?
it goes back into the reserve for the city.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a reserve, undesignated.
Okay, so yeah, and not to monopolize this, but I did ask
No, no.
Patty today, which was like the 11th hour, I'd love to see the balance sheet of each fund. Is there a balance sheet for each fund? And are there only these three funds
Yep.
in the city?
Yep.
And basically, I am looking at the
Sure.
cash. That's the balance sheet item I really want to look at,
Yeah.
you know? Unless you have a big liability obligation to somebody that's gonna suck down a big part of these.
Well, we have our capital projects, we have our operating budget. You know, for a year, yes, it'll suck some of that down, but as an example, you're having the revenue come in.
Right.
Like last year, we had enough revenue that came into the city that we didn't need to use that transfer of 307,000,
So that built up the reserve by 307,000,
right? And then
which is a good thing.
Right,
So outside of capital improvements, our city's budget is balanced.
Actually.
For the
we
most
make a
part, or
little-
maybe
we
even
make a
slightly
little
in the
profit.
black, a little in the black, right? Okay.
Last year,
So, in looking at these and the way they were prioritized, it seems to me, in looking at the strategic plan, that that alignment is proper. So again, I mean, it seems to me like it was good work on your part with guidance from the,
yeah, the city
council.
council gave us rankings.
Yeah.
We sent it to each one, they ranked the projects, and then we took an average number, and then went through these. Now, the stormwater projects, a little different. We looked at them from, we had an update on the stormwater master plan, and we refocused what streets got done first. What was creating the worst situation.
yeah.
And we're moving down that list at a reasonable pace.
Can you describe a stormwater improvement without getting too detailed?
Well, the one
Raise
that-
the road, raise
No,
the.
you can't raise the road. You live on an island.
Floods.
Yeah, well, I guess I could raise the road.
Yeah,
I don't want my street raised though.
yeah,
We can raise Rick's road.
yeah, we need to.
And no, what a stormwater typically, we're doing things, we're putting check valves, because the biggest problem with flooding here is tidal. It's high tide and wind, okay? That's where most of the water's coming from. Now, high tide and wind and a rainstorm, I don't care where you live. You live on an island, you're gonna get wet. So that water is, gotta have somewhere to go. If it's high tide, we block the high tide from coming in the street. Previously though, what was happening was the high tide water was coming in the street, and then we got one time about 3 inches of rain in a couple hours.
Yeah.
And that's a bad mix. So what these projects are doing, we're putting check valves on the outfalls, which is trying to prevent the backflow. It's kind of like a backflow preventer on your reclaimed water or something like that.
You on your sewage, yeah.
And then we're replacing the inlets to get better flow into them, because our inlet system is probably
Antiquated.
60
Best.
years old, probably for the most part. And they're the old boxes. So what we're doing is converting them to a grate system and getting better flow along the curbs and getting that water to get out of the street as best as possible.
It's going down a catch basin, is that correct?
Yeah,
Then where does the water go?
into a pipe, and then all of our stormwater drainage goes to the intercoastal. Nothing goes to
The Gulf.
the Gulf.
So, yeah, goes right over the bay, yeah.
And so, so we're changing that, and where we can, we're enlarging the pipes. As an example, on First and Second Street, we had a park. So we had a 15-inch pipe, and we enlarged it to the 24-inch pipe. So what that does, it gives us more capacity to store if the tide's high. You know, if it's not a major storm, then we've got some storage capacity. Well, right now, in a lot of the streets, there are 15-inch pipes, and, you know, the storage capacity is very limited there. And it's an old system. So as we go down the street, we'll enlarge the pipes where we can, but some of the outfalls, well, a good majority of them are between houses. And we're not gonna go dig up between houses because you could impact the foundation of the home.
Yeah.
So then we do curb work as needed, and then we resurface the road, which gives a better flow situation into that. And another thing that we've been doing, some of our outfalls were connected to Gulf Boulevard's drainage system. And why they did that, I have no idea. It was done 20, 30 years ago probably. And we're disconnecting from them because we found in some cases that it's creating a backup on our stormwater system. In some cases, the flow is going backwards into their system. Belle Isle, a good example. The water was going around the intersection from 3 sides, going into their pipe and going this way and their water's coming this way, so that water's going nowhere, except back up in the street. So things like that we've done. So that's kind of where we're at.
So again, from a non-engineering point of view, if you have high tide, 3 inches of rain in a very short time, you've done the storm water improvements, am I correct that you're just circulating the water till the tide goes down?
Yes.
So the intercoastal can take it?
Yeah. Got
I can
interested
go
how
home
that
now, I
works.
know everything.
Yeah,
No. But,
Just to give you a little
So-
history, the problem has been going on for 20, 30 years, if not more. So it's not until recently
yeah.
that Lynn has
Yeah,
taken
we've
upon
done-
the task to fix it.
Yeah, we've done 1st through 6th. We've done, Belle Isle intersection. We put check valve on 12th and a check valve on 13th.
yeah.
The last major stormwater project the city had was on 12th and 13th, and that was in 2004, prior to this.
Yeah.
Did you, I digress, but did you happen to watch 60 Minutes last night about Venice? Because it's going underwater.
Oh, yeah.
But they have, next year, they're supposed to have these mechanical barriers, I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah, it's
Like a
levee.
reef, or a levee, that's the answer, that's supposed to come up and stop the Adriatic Sea when
Yeah,
from coming in.
yeah.
The engineers, based on what's happening now, have indicated the potential for those to be raised almost daily.
Yeah, daily.
And that's not
What they're built for.
the engineering standard that those have been designed or being built to. So they're gonna wear out a whole lot faster.
So,
But yeah, I saw that segment too.
yeah.
No, I was watching golf.
Yeah.
Priorities.
Can I just
So I
comment on
think-
this storm situation? This is why I'm really pushing to do a stormwater fee on our water bill, to spread the cost around a little bit, because it's a $3.8 million budget to do all these improvements that we don't have budgeted. And we can never collect all that in stormwater fees, but we have ongoing maintenance. So that's why I'm pushing to try to move something like that along. Lynn and I have been working on it.
So Judy,
Yeah, I think it's
the
pretty-
total budget based on today to complete everything is 3.8 million?
That was the total stormwater improvements based on the engineering estimates.
Yeah.
Is that
It
before-
was-
before the
was
projects
yours-
that were
That was done years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, this was just done, it was at 4.1, and we just went 3 something, so it's now.
I think that's how I
3.8.
got 3.8, yeah,
Yeah, it's 3.8
remaining.
remaining.
And then,
We updated that,
And, yeah.
Summer? Did we
what's
update?
a typical fee that's charged?
Well, depends where you're at.
Yeah.
Anywhere from $10 to $25 is
A
what
month?
I'm seeing.
A month.
A month.
Yeah.
No, a billing cycle.
Yeah,
Buildings, okay.
Well, yeah, no, so City of Largo is
Every 2
25
months.
a month. City of Largo is 25 a month.
So what I see on this
No.
old schedule is about 3.6 million of storm, if, I just did it in my
Yeah.
head, so that's the number we're talking about.
And when we add those other projects in there, the number is much, much larger. So I commend the city council and the city for stepping forward and doing some of these projects that have been out there for a long time. I guess the question we're kind of faced with, we're gonna run out of our reserves in a relatively short period of time.
3-4 years.
And I don't, right, that's, somewhere 4 to 5 years, we won't have any reserves. I don't know if the city council's given you any guidance as to, this is as low as we're gonna go? Do we have a bottom line number that we're not gonna go
Well-
below?
there's the
Or,
resolution requires me to keep a 20% reserve, which is about $540,000.
okay, yeah,
But-
For the
but-
whole city?
Yeah, but when you talk about the reserve, that's on top of the 1.4. That's something on top, it's not part of that. It's, because when I tell you the reserve balance that is, I guess I'll say available, That's the number I'm talking about. is it?
Undesignated reserves, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the money that's required, because it was adopted some time ago, to keep 20% of our budget in a reserve.
Okay, so basically $3.5 million in the general fund. You can move money, neither one's restricted, so you move it as you need to back and forth. The capital improvement fund, you can move, I don't know why you would, but you could.
The council approves.
Right,
Right.
okay, understood, yeah, understood, okay.
Can I shed some light on that
So
for
the-
a second? You know, one way to think of this is, the capital improvement plan is kind of the expansion joint in all this. Depending on the severity of the problem, hey, we need to address this problem right now, or we can mitigate it and move it a little further down the road. That kind of dictates your burn rate of that reserve fund. I mean, so how you manage your capital projects kind of changes the slope of that burn rate on your reserve fund.
I was just gonna use it, yeah.
But if you hit, Lynn, if you had a balanced budget every year from this year on, you had a surplus last year, but if you had a balanced budget, then this general fund reserve of 3.6 million would stay right there plus interest maybe,
Oh,
but,
if you had a balanced budget, yeah.
yeah, just, so you can't run deficits, that's,
Well, our budget this year is
Okay.
2.7, if I remember right.
2,704,000.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was my email to Patty that generated this. This is awesome, because I had no idea what other cities, what their millage rates are. And this tells me everybody's millage rate. This is terrific. But is there discussions with other cities? I mean, do you talk to them about what they're doing? Do you care? And how sacrosanct is our $2.03 millage rate?
Well, if you look at
Which
that-
we're near the bottom.
Yeah, we are near the bottom. You know, I'll give you an example. Ours is 203, Miller's is 5, something.
Yeah.
So, you know, it kind of goes all over the place. Bel Air Shore is, what is it, like less than 1, I think.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's 0.63, but they got 56 houses.
Yeah.
A few of them are worth $7 or $8 million,
Yeah.
so, and they don't have anything. They don't have any stormwater to deal with, they don't have any, really, their only expense, to my knowledge, is the police, maybe some code enforcement dollars, and, you know, their court, other than that, trash, because they pay that out of their taxes.
So are you saying that they if we looked at their financial statements, they're probably flush with cash, we believe, or not?
I don't
And
know.
I guess I'm thinking, can you tap into them in some way for storm
No,
water improvements, saying, we're keeping the water off your grass, or, no?
no,
Okay.
no, because they're across, they're Gulf Boulevard.
But at Indian Rocks Beach, I see is $1.8.
Bigger town, more taxes,
Commercial
plus,
tax.
There's commercial,
we don't have that,
Right.
right.
yeah.
So what I'm seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of our goal in all this is to, just to pick a rough, but hopefully somewhat accurate number. How do we improve our annual income somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 a year is what we would need to maintain the capital improvements and the projects that we want to do. Would that be a fair statement, Lynn? Is that a reasonable number in order to avoid using reserves unless they're really reserve emergencies?
That's a reasonable number, but as an example, it probably wouldn't be that high, as an example, if we do the stormwater fee. Because that number, the
Well,
only thing,
Stormwater, what is the total I was thinking you said
We
80.
think like
Yes.
100, we're thinking
80.
about 120,000.
yeah. So if you've got that 100,000, that's, can only be used, which some people think, oh, they're just trying to get some extra cash.
Right.
No, that can only be used, it's set up,
By law, basically.
yeah, it's an assessment and it needs to be validated by the courts and it isn't, you know, and Jody and I have had a lot of education on it. It isn't snap your finger and get it, and vice mayor's had a lot of education on it too, so, it's a process. And,
But it's an ongoing, and it would offset
some of those
costs.
costs.
Yeah.
Because if you look at our, if you go into the budget and look at, we'll just look at public works. We're spending stormwater maintenance, and that's drains. You know, we have to do things like, and what this really, we're spending like $20,000 a year into that, unless there's an emergency. Last year it was a little high because we had some issues that we had to fix. We had to reline some pipes that collapsed. But, you know, we're falling in the $20,000. We've got CDS boxes on 12th and 13th that we have to get inspected every 6 months, and they have to be back trucked out. There's pipes that we have to take the sediment out of.
Right.
So from a maintenance standpoint, you know, we've been pretty good about in the 20,000 range. Last year, we had a couple of hiccups where a pipe collapsed and we had to reline it.
And that's gonna happen.
What's the average life of the stormwater if you did it?
A new one or an old one?
If you did the 3.8? If you did the 3.8
Yeah,
million,
that's a good question.
See,
Uh,
that's one thing, they're not completely fixed, these are repairs, really old deferred repairs. that
it's
have
just
not-
deferred maintenance, it's not?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But I thought you said you were taking a 15-inch pipe and putting it.
Oh, no, we are. We can at some points, but as an example, if,
You tear up
and
a
I'll
road.
just pick on John,
Sure,
because he's got a big hole in his backyard.
not yet,
Well, some,
soon, hopefully.
we would not go between his house and his neighbor and tear out a pipe because of the integrity. Or even yours, you've got an outfall probably right around your house. And we wouldn't do that because that's a substantial risk that something would happen. Who knows, maybe your footer or whatever your house was built with,
Ties into the pool or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you've got a potential collapse. And very narrow, you know, we don't have a lot of space between our houses, you know, if you
No.
really look at
You
it.
know,
So the places where we can really enlarge the pipes are places like our parks, and almost every one of those little lot parks has an outfall at it. So that's where we get the biggest bang for our buck, you know, to enlarge stuff. But like on Rick Street, if we want to enlarge the pipe on 12th, and that's really the only place we could do
Yeah.
it, we're gonna have to get an easement across that property at the corner. I'm trying to think of the guy's name, I can't remember it, right there, dead end of 12th.
mhm.
He's got an open vacant space there, but
It's a lot of land there.
there's a lot of land,
Yeah,
so
but it's-
that opportunity, there's an opportunity there to
Yeah.
do something. But short of that,
Yeah.
it's only in the parks that we own,
Mhm.
nowhere else.
Okay.
So question,
Yeah.
Lynn, then, of that 3.8 million, does that just wipe out the backlog of all the repairs?
That wipes out the priority that we had. There's still gonna be ongoing maintenance.
Yeah, no, I
And
understand the
emergencies.
recurring maintenance, so my question is it a consideration to, you do a complete rehab project, bond it out, assess the project, bring us up to a reasonable
Yeah.
standard, and then move on with just a recurring cost? I mean, we need to do a risk benefit of,
Yeah, if it's,
at what point do you just say, okay, hey, we can't deal
some
with it?
cities do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The bonded.
they bond it out and say,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna do a
Pass it on to the residents.
$4 million and we're gonna, in typical, they just increase the taxes, millage rate, and they pledge a portion of that millage rate to the bond. It's kinda like what's happening with the underground assessment. The residents pay the assessment and all of those fees are pledged towards the debt.
Was it $20,000 a resident somewhere in that neighborhood?
If you were overhead, it was 21, and if you were under, it was 16.
16.
Okay.
Don't tell me.
And they had an
that, 'cause I've got
opportunity
more
to
on it.
either pay that, right, or put it onto their mortgage and
Right,
pay it out
and
on
what it works out to
period of time.
is
$100 a month.
12, 16, is it 12/16/70 and 16/11/70? Or 12/67/70,
Annually.
per year.
per year
Per
for
year.
20 years,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and they're in
And only like 10 or 12 people pay for it,
25,
25 paid up for it.
about
So that's 25%,
roughly, yeah,
22%.
yeah.
The 3 million aid of improvements to the stormwater improvement or system, again, is that not replacing pipes at all?
Some of it is.
Some of
Some,
it is, some
okay.
Mixed.
for the most part.
And some of it's paving too, so you've gotta say that, you know, some of that is paving, is that not correct, Lynn?
Yeah, some
Yeah.
of it is. But we tie all that together. and
How do you decide the pipes that you're going to replace?
We have an engineer that gave us a master plan and went through the whole city. The original one was in 2016, and we had it updated this past year. And they did modeling, you know, stormwater modeling, it's a big binder, it's about that thick, to kind of see where the areas are the worst. As an example, there's just certain areas that are really bad. Probably in the scheme of things, the worst one in the last 20 years was 12th and 13th. And then they did some work on it to try to help it. And then the next worst was down on First, Second Street. I mean, it was underwater. I mean, the street I live on is underwater in high tide. So, you know, it's, Rebecca lives on, she knows.
Knee deep at times.
Yeah.
Lynn, where are you and Jody at on the process?
We tried
That's
to
a
bring it to
no-brainer.
council last meeting and didn't seem
We're-
like
we're-
it got tabled until the work session, which
Yeah,
everything
we're
gets
gonna have
kicked down the road.
we're gonna have
That's just the beauty right there.
We're gonna
It's an
have,
ongoing, you hit your 3 million plus over time, so what? That's coming in forever.
yeah.
That's a no-brainer. So that process is tied up with council, nothing outside?
No, well, here, the process for stormwater fee, you have to hire an engineering firm or someone that understands the methodology. And they have to say that, as an example, they'll take a generalized number and say, okay, this house is impervious surface is this much, this house, they'll go through the city and collect this data. And then, they gotta make sure that it's reasonable and fair to everyone in the city. So it's a study that's done, and then you take it to,
What's that cost?
about 40,000 round number. I think we got a bid of 36. Is that right?
36 and 24, I think, the two
Yeah.
numbers we have for that.
Yeah.
And then the council who will have to manage the whole thing. that
The
will-
what?
The attorney, council that will
Yeah.
manage it.
Yeah. And, you know, we've talked to the attorney that we did for the undergrounding. He does this work too. And, I mean, I feel he's a very competent attorney, and I think I relayed that to the council that, hey, you can go run around and chase 10 attorneys. At least I got a bird in the hand and I know what he can do. He did a very good job for us on the undergrounding. We went to court, did all the validation, he did all that stuff, and we walked into this judge's chamber and sat down, and I think we were there 20 minutes. He asked us a couple questions, and guess what? Validated. And you need that, because if you don't get that validation, Johnny, 5 years from now, could say, I want all my stormwater fees back, and for whatever reason. If it's validated, that can't happen because it's been, you know, you didn't complain about it previously, I guess is what.
So this study, if I understand you correctly, is in front of the council to approve the money to do the
We,
study?
last council meeting, I gave the council the proposal from Chris Rowe. I gave them, some other information. Jody and I spent quite a bit of time on, you know, the whole process, how it works, because trying to educate the council and everyone that you just can't snap your finger
Sure.
and charge somebody. So it was pushed to the work session next week.
Right, I think you were just asking for them to look at, does this have to go out to,
Right.
based on our charter? We don't think it has to go out for
Right.
bid, that we can just hire someone we
Chris.
already have under an agreement.
Right.
And, I mean, Chris Rowe, and move forward, so, and we were looking,
So-
Lynn was looking for that approval, kinda, like everyone think about that.
Yeah, so I gave them that option. We're gonna have a more hearty discussion at the work session on 21st. Is that right?
Now, here's a question for you, is, we've got the legal aspect of this thing, and then we've got the engineering aspect to determine the assessment methodology like that. Question is, or at least to build in the robustness of that assessment methodology, so that if we can use it for determining user fees, or if later on we want to pursue a bond and just wipe out this entire backlog,
Yeah.
can we apply the same assessment methodology?
I would think so.
I would think so too, but.
Are there any grants available to get
Not
this
just
stormwater?
Well, we put in,
Good question.
we put in a couple, and our problem is we don't meet the one-to-one, as an example. Most of our streets with the heavy flooding have 15, 20 houses on it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you look at a federal grant, you've got to have an impact. And 15 people are not an impact in the scheme of the federal's mind, okay?
It's not US 19.
No,
Yeah, right, we're
right.
gonna pass everyone in
Okay.
town.
And Swift Mud, I went to them, gosh, over a year ago, and brought them out here, laid all this stuff out on them, and they basically told me, you're not a regional system, which is true, we're not. We're a beach, small system, and we don't really connect to a regional system, and where would we go to connect to one? There isn't. So the grant theory for a lot of this stuff is we're not gonna qualify because we don't have the impacts. Like the last one, we tried to fudge with it with the FEMA hazard mitigation grant. And they did our calculation had us at 1-to-1, but when they did their calculation, it ended up at like 0.46 to 1. Well, we believe ours is, and you should, when you put a grant application in, you gotta color it in the way that you feel, but you're limited. So we don't have a lot of opportunities to obtain funding that way.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to go to all the cities down the intracoastal and just say, let's all get together, because we would have a big impact,
I don't
probably
know if that would
unwieldy.
Fed's criteria either, because of individual municipalities.
Yeah.
Annual debt service,
Huh?
current annual debt service.
It's 160 plus interest, so it's about 200 this year.
So if you did it,
205, something like that, I could be off a little bit.
so maybe our bankers could help us, let's say $3.8 million bond issue, what are the rates and what's the term of a bond issue?
Assume it's 3% on 20-year money, it's $253,000.
A year,
Yeah,
for 20 years?
20 years at 3%. But there's a high likelihood it'd be less, right? 10-year treasury is 186 or so, so 30-year money.
We have the
I think
first
is
year
much
paid
lower.
for with last year's surplus.
So I looked at 30-year, on the same 30-year would be 192. That's why I was asking, what's the average life, if it could go out? And so,
Oh, yeah,
I was kind of looking back at my notes when we first met, and not everybody was there when the city council all kind of gave their wish list, and just looking at Jody's comment, part of the thought is we got $1 million in a hurricane fund. If we take the $1 million, we buy it down to 2.8, that's 186,000. I'm thinking if you merge the debt, you could probably get there, but there's probably other things to do. And then, then we get, our bank to give us $1 million hurricane emergency line of credit, that if we have to, we can hit it, and we can always raise, taxes down the road. Isn't it? I mean, it's just kind of a big picture idea, thinking through versus the money sitting in the bank earning nothing. I'm sure it's not,
About 1/8.
yeah, it's not a whole lot. And which we could probably borrow it at just a little bit over that, so, yeah, just, if you buy it down to 2.8 million, that's 186 versus 253. And then I was just thinking, if you refinance the remaining debt, but I know there's a prepayment penalty, but maybe in the spirit of some trust and BET coming together, you give them a little bit more money, they may. I remember talking to Adam when we were doing our underground utility, and he was very inflexible about any kind of prepayment relief, but it's what, 2 years left? 3 years? 4 years? It's a short window.
10 years.
Four or five.
It's 4 or 5, it's.
5, like all of it.
Yeah.
It's about 5, because we're under a
My
million.
only concern about long-term debt on that storm is that it doesn't ever fix the problem down there. The problem is
Well, that's what I was wondering, if
the
this.
south
if you're
end of the
looking
town was built
below.
first, and below, it was at sea level practically, so we're never gonna fix the problem. The tidal issues are always gonna be an issue. And so you're gonna always, until we can raise the whole, the
Street.
ground and everything, the
Raise the
street,
street.
you can't raise the street because there's some homes that are on grade that, they're gonna, backflow into their home. Like the gentleman that was in here on 9th at the, council
Right,
meeting said
right.
there's, the roads flood, cars drive down the road, it causes waves to come up into his garage, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of issue you'll have raising the street. So you can never fix, until all those houses are knocked down, there's never a true fix. We can keep putting Band-Aids on it.
Mitigate,
So,
yeah.
so I hate to take out long-term money for something that's really just a Band-Aid trying to alleviate some of the flooding that will never stop the flooding down there.
Then the only thing to do is dig
Well-
up the street and put a swimming pool under.
Yes, there's
There's a way to do it, we
I
done
used to
it.
story I read about a city in South Florida that's buying
Buying properties, yeah.
residents' homes out because of global warming and future flooding.
Because then they can create those as an example, I'll call them shallow stormwater ponds. So you can, and Miami's done that. They've bought properties and then they built what I call a shallow stormwater pond. I mean, they're probably 4 or 5 foot deep. But what they do is they get all that water into here, and then they've got these huge pumps that's pumping it over seawalls. So they're trying to alleviate part of it. But our problem is, we don't really have that benefit because there's very few empty lots, and
You start eroding the tax base.
you're eroding the tax base there. So,
Well, one of the cities in this area is looking into that alternative where they have the 1,000-foot wells or something, they inject it right into the ground and below the aquifers or whatever, where,
Just deep injection wells?
yeah, instead of having, retention ponds, it's like 1,000-foot wells. It's not cheap technology, but I mean, it's like,
yeah, a lot of cities are doing that with reclaimed water.
get rid of the water.
They're-
I've got a client down in Fort Myers that does it for all of South Florida. They put those wells in place, and so, I can inquire about.
Yeah, Oldsmar did one for reclaimed water. They pump it into the deep injection, and then when they need it, when everybody runs their sprinkler 6 days a week, or they're not supposed to, they got extra water, they put into the system. Because sometimes, the 1,000,000 gallons storage tanks they have won't handle it.
Ron, what are the periods on the bonds typically? Is it 20 or 30, or could be anything?
I mean, I think depending on what the asset life, if you will, would be.
Right.
20 years, just an average mortgage.
It's 20 years, okay.
Yeah, and that's the new piping and drain things, they're 25 to 30 year life.
Okay.
I mean, we've got a lot
So,
of life out of our stuff, but
yeah.
over the years, there's places, last year we had a couple, we had to slip line, which we caught them before they collapsed, which was wonderful. Just slip lining, basically what you're doing, if you don't understand that, you're putting a pipe inside a pipe.
Right.
And it's as strong as that pipe that was on the end, that was caving in. And we were fortunate
Yeah.
that we were able to do that. But it does reduce the pipe size a little bit.
But that's a brand new pipe then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
It's cheap,
So,
it's cheaper than.
Cheaper than digging up, oh yeah, it's cheaper than digging up, but, what we found, we need to improve our catch basins. They're old school, they're old. It allows a lot of stuff to go down in there that really shouldn't. With the new great catch basins, we don't have that debris going into them. So, you know, you're not, as an example, after the Hurricane Irma, we went around to catch basins, you know, in many parts of the city and had to take the lids off and pull the palm fronds and whatever else went down in there.
I got a couple of questions
All right, so-
on the stormwater thing too, if I may. So, if I understand this, we need $3.8 million to complete the remaining
Master plan.
master plan, and these are improvements, not replacements per se.
They're a mix.
They're a mix, okay. All right. And you said, Lynn, that the engineer updated the life expectancy of the city's system last year,
He updated the master plan.
master plan, so cost.
Yeah.
What's the estimated remaining life of the current stormwater system?
It's past its useful life
yeah.
already. It's
Already.
past it.
Okay.
Now, not First Street or Second Street.
No, I understand.
But
What-
I'm talking the current stormwater
As a
system
whole.
Okay.
is past its useful life.
If we did all the upgrades and recommendations, he said, would he give an average?
Yeah, I could ask him that.
Okay.
Because, you know,
Even
even
now,
at-
what were you saying?
if we do the upgrades he recommends, what would then be the average life?
Oh, I see.
You know, just, again, just big picture, if you take the $1 million reserves, pay it down, we finance 2.8, it's 186, but if we're getting 100,000 in new pledged, if we go with the stormwater fee, so it's net only 86,000 out of the annual budget, if we were 300 plus positive, still gives us 200 and change for other stuff as we go down the road, unless we identify some other expense cuts in here, so it's.
Yeah, you know, I think the city's on the right path to fix these things. I mean, I think we're, you know, we repaired the 2 major seawalls in the city. And probably the next big thing, other than stormwater, is at some point in time, we're gonna have to replace 22nd Street Bridge. And, you know, I don't think I'd put a bridge back there. I think I'd put box culverts if the Corps would allow us.
Hmm.
Because that lifespan is a lot longer than piles and, you know, so, you know, there's things you can do to alleviate that. And, you know, there's been a lot of studies out there that say, instead of, because it's only 22 foot wide, you know, it's a minimal bridge, I guess I'll call it.
No, it's the kayakers and the boaters that have a heart attack putting a box culvert bridge in.
Yeah, but, you know,
And the dolphins that swim back.
long term, there's a way to, or you do a precast, which is another option.
Well, did you say it'd be approximately $200,000 to service that debt if that bond was taken out? Approximately 190 to 200,000 on 3.8.
2.8 million, it's 186,000,
Okay.
call it 190. But if you did the whole 3.8, it's 250, 255.
Okay.
Okay, 3.8.
Okay, well, that's maybe something we bring to the council for them to consider. Is that-
What was that payback annually again, Ron, please? On 3.8?
200.
3.8 is 255. And again, that's assuming 20 years at 3%.
Okay.
It, usually Lynn would have to do the math more accurately. That's,
Yeah.
my little app does a monthly payment scheme, but these are normally an annual interest payment, so it might be a few dollars.
Oh, I wasn't trying to get you nailed down to it. Just ballpark. If, I got a suggestion here too. That we have these committees, ours, the charter review and everything else. City puts out this newsletter thingy via email.
Every other month.
Every other month. I'd suggest that maybe some of the things that some of these committees are discussing, particularly our committee, about budgeting, for example, we're talking storm drains, storm sewers and everything else. Where the city's at, you know, and what we're trying to do to correct it and still not raise taxes or more fees, but I can see where the need for the stormwater fee comes from. It would take a little bit of burden off of the taxpayer in one sense and maybe not raise the millage rate extraordinarily. I mean, I could, you know, most people could probably afford, $15, $25 per billing cycle, and that's through the water bill. So that, you're talking $25 a month, $12.50 a month. So maybe if we started getting some word out, I don't know how many people are signed up for those. You
They're a
know,
low number.
pathetic. My wife says, well, I don't get this. I said, well, you need to tell the city to, I'm not doing for her. So I have the solution. When I look at my email then, I'm gonna start forwarding it to her so she can see.
Yeah, percentage of people that are on that email list are, it's very
Oh.
Just
small.
small. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's,
Okay.
10% of the city, I'll be in shock.
That's only about 160 some people then, based on the last population.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I mean, it may have 400 plus names on it, but they're, you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
it could be husband, wife, child in the same household, so it's not getting to the preponderance of the residents, let's put it that way.
So if I may, just supposing for a moment that the city council were to move forward, that would solve a lot of the immediate issues. And as Ron said, yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen 10 years from now, or understand, I'm certainly concerned about taking on long-term debt that is not, you know, we get there, then we're facing another crisis there, or another situation there. Are there any other large budget items out there outside of stormwater? I mean, others I see here, things like beautification, parks and rec.
Beautification is over with.
Yeah,
That was money that Pinellas County gave us. They gave us 2.6 million. There is another penny out there, but it's only for Gulf Boulevard, it's not for anywhere else. And they're in the discussion right now to determine if they're gonna give it to individual cities or they're gonna use it as one lump sum project and underground everything on Gulf Boulevard. So until that determination is made, you know, we will have another penny. The city's cut is about 2.6 because Bel Air Shore gives us theirs.
oh,
They give us their portion of it. And I think if the county doesn't do it as a large-scale project, the undergrounding, then I believe we'll have enough money to do ours on the east side of Gulf Boulevard, because we've already expended the money to do the other side. So,
okay, all right.
other big projects, at some point in time, 22nd, we get a every other year inspection by FDOT, and it's not a negative inspection. At this point, every year there's some repairs and, you know, we spend, I think last year we spent about, I wanna say $6,000 or $7,000 on repairs for 22nd Street Bridge. 2 years ago, we did Harrison, we did, regrouted underneath the pavement, redid the seawall, you know, but that was about a 300,000 project, somewhere around there. But there again, so that bridge is in good shape for a while. So I guess the rest of the projects mainly are things like capital equipment, and the city's done a pretty good job with that also, because most of our stuff over the last 2 or 3 years has been bought new and replaced. Some of it was pretty, we had a tractor that was like 30 years old and things of that nature. But those things have been replaced, so we don't have, but we want to save the money for it.
Sure.
And you don't want to get slapped with that fee 10 years from now.
Is the marina in the type of shape you want it to be in, or is there a wish list of things?
Well, the marina's kind of a unique situation. If you wanted to refurbish the marina, you got an issue with the stormwater pond that you would have to put in there, which would probably take, I'll say, a quarter of the drive property. You've got 70 spaces that are committed to beach renourishment that's required. So if we said we're gonna not do beach renourishment, which I think the population on the beach, well, I think most of the population, I don't think it's just the condos. I think most of the population that have cardiac arrest, if you told them you weren't gonna do beach renourishment. So you've gotta have parking spaces, and there's requirements, and basically, we only have 2 places that qualify within that quarter-mile range that it has to be by law. And that's Morgan Park and the marina. Bel Air Shore, of course, doesn't take beach renourishment. That's why they don't have to let anybody park in anything. So, you know, there are reasons there for that. And the next one's due in 21, I think, next renourishment.
May I add to back to the marina, I think that some of the question has been, is there a possibility of that being sold and, you know, somehow still accommodate the parking requirements, or some way to raise money was kind of, I think, what has come up in the
Yeah.
past at some work sessions and that sort of thing. Is there unrecognized opportunity for revenue there?
I think from a cap gain perspective, right, there's potential in the marina and the White House, right?
Yeah.
What's the right asset?
Can we sell them? Is that a possibility? Maybe, you know, if not sell them, is there a developer that would lease the land? Is there some, you know, something, you know, so that was something that came up. And then another thing from the revenue standpoint, Ron, to your point, was we have several hotels, condos that are nightly, weekly rentals, short-term rentals, look like hotels, behave like hotels, but we don't get any room fee.
Call themselves,
Yeah, call themselves Bel Air
Something.
Beach Hotel.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
they recently changed the name. But we don't have any commercial properties, therefore they're not taxed as commercial properties. We don't get bed tax on any of that. So, you know, that, I think we need to get the attorney involved in looking at that and seeing if that's a potential for some tax base that we're missing out on.
But aren't some of those short-term / long-term rentals physically in the city of Bel Air Beach?
They all are on the Bel Air Beach. Bel Air Shores is only single-family residence.
So the Bel Air Beach Resort is in our city,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and we're not collecting bed tax?
Well, we wouldn't collect
That
bed
tax
tax.
goes to the county.
Doesn't come,
Crap.
doesn't
But
come
still,
to the
we
city.
Should get
be
sales tax.
commercial or something, some sales
You
tax,
don't get
something.
sales tax?
We probably get some sales tax, cause that's a low number, but the, TDC money and stuff like that, that goes directly to the county, we don't get any of that.
Yeah, that's,
And it's how they're designated, you know, and we need to verify, Jody and I have had a lot of conversations about that. And we need to understand a little better, because most of them are considered, well, they're all considered condos or timeshares.
Hotel, what are they, hotelominiums, or what do
Yeah,
they call
yeah.
themselves? you know?
So, you know, it was a designation that they were able to obtain from, you know, because it's, goes through the county planning and stuff, and it probably at one point in time, they were all condominiums, and, or a timeshare,
yeah.
as opposed to, like where John lives, that's a condo,
Right.
you know, but they rent,
But it's,
I think we have 3
30
properties
day.
that are kind of like hotels.
yeah, Nautical Watch, the Beach Club, and the Bel Air Beach Resort.
Yeah.
They
Nautical
all
Watch.
do daily renting.
Yes,
they do,
Daily.
certainly, yeah.
Nautical Watch is a timeshare, I can tell you
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Nautical Watch, okay.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
had many discussions with them.
Yeah, I'll bet you have.
Wait, does any, I don't know the economics of those places if they were to be designated as commercial. And I know that's maybe a leap, but what kind of revenue can you get from it? Is it meaningful revenue?
Yeah,
That's what we need to take a look at.
Yeah, somebody should look at that, yeah, okay.
Some of the parks in the city were donated over time. Do we have anything annually that comes in where someone passes away and they're donating to the city?
You mean a program or something? No.
You know what, Lynn, I'm just thinking of the parks I go to, or even the marina, it has a plate on it.
Well,
Donated by
the-
so-and-so.
Yeah, those,
Does that not happen anymore?
no,
Yeah, that's a little old school, huh?
yeah. Well, if you're in Bel Air, it happens. Some guy gave them $3.5 million and a house.
There you go, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, if you don't have that idea out there, no one's gonna do it.
Okay, thank you.
Speak back on the thought of the, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Just real quick on that, speaking of these parks that have been donated, especially along the water's edge, are all of those donated, or are some of those physically owned by the city exclusive?
Well, they're all owned by the city.
Okay, but how many
And
of them were
some-
not donated?
I don't know that there's any that weren't
Oh,
donated.
I mean,
Well,
what-
as an example, when the city was developed,
Yeah,
They bought the marina.
Mr. Well, the marina's a different story. I'm talking about the little pocket parks. In a lot of cases, those were given to us by a resident or a developer like,
Ruttenberg or something like that.
Mr. Kirby, who was in the early part of the city, those beach accesses.
Yeah,
He gave deeds to Bel Air Shore with the stipulation that the city of Bel Air Beach residents east of Gulf Boulevard, adjacent to them, could use them.
okay,
That's kind of how the deed reads. That, you know, if you were First through Sixth Street, you could use it if you were 6 through 12, but that's how the,
yeah, I'd love to debate that with you another time, because I've
Yeah.
got the legal documents and it.
yeah.
But anyway,
you know, we were talking about sources of revenue, or, you know, and I'm thinking if some of those were donated, if you will, by developers, is there something that prohibits us from selling them if they're buildable? The ones donated by families
well,
or whatever?
you-
It's only a one-time source of revenue though,
Right.
and, but it
But the problem
reduces
with
the
that-
maintenance.
But the problem with that is,
Mhm.
most of those parks have a drainage
Yeah.
I-
I've thought about that too, so,
And
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
is
Okay.
that beneficial to the city to?
Not really if you got a outflow with a check valve, no.
Right.
Okay.
I think Hibiscus does it.
East
Uh,
Hibiscus.
Huh?
I don't think East Hibiscus
No.
does.
But like Belle Isle, which is a pretty good sized park, it's got a drainage pipe going through it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Questions, thoughts?
I just want to look on expenses. Have you ever looked at the, outsourcing, the Parks and Rec, Public Works? Is there any benefit? Is it?
Well, I'm gonna just tell you my experience with doing that, because we're so small, wouldn't be very beneficial to us.
What about code enforcement?
It's outsourced.
That's out.
Well, you're paying the sheriff to do it, correct? Could you make it a volunteer position with the city? Volunteers maybe are interested, you could have a committee or a group get together and they take turns.
That's an idea.
That's 40 grand a year that you're saving. I mean, I know it's small, but, I feel like that would be better than the taxes going up, I mean, that's an area to look at. I know you've already done a great job of getting that lowered from the previous year. You eliminated the head count, but I think that might be something to look at.
So we will.
I don't know if
What are our
volunteer code
recommendations, yeah?
enforcement brings a liability issue in, because some people take the position of code enforcement to their head.
Yeah.
Or
They may do something the city would not want them to
Yeah, you
do.
get
Plus,
beat up
you
pretty,
need
it's
to be
hard to find
trained.
volunteers.
Yeah.
There's,
could you do an email instead
Well, no, I
and say,
know, so-
please report any code violations to the city, and then y'all can determine whether it's actionable or not?
I think there's a difference between code enforcement and a homeowners association enforcement, so that's just something we gotta look at.
yeah.
Yeah,
Probably Rebecca, the biggest violation that we have being right on the beach as a
Mhm.
24 unit condo is next door to us is the beach club, and they allow pets.
Okay.
And I won't say we're constantly calling here, but we do call here and say, get over here, there's dogs out on that beach.
yeah.
People don't, and there's great signs out there. It even tells them the fine. People just walk right by it. If you take a picture or a video, by the time you take any action, those people may not be there anymore. It's difficult.
Just an idea,
No, it's
just to
great.
shoot it out
Yeah.
there, so it's just a thought.
Yeah.
Maybe you're holding the wrong people responsible instead of the renter tenant.
Oh, no,
The property manager.
Glenn, I've said that already, that we need to hold the beach club responsible,
property.
and that, I don't wanna say it's fallen on deaf ears, I don't think it has, I just don't know how you do that, how you enforce that. Because there are individual owners in the beach club, it is a timeshare to some degree. There's like one investor that owns 17 of the units or 19 of
Yeah.
the units there. And then there's multiple, so who do you hold responsible? The management company maybe, I don't know.
What cameras are?
Well, but the
They'll be
enforcement issue, as you well know, is John might see them. If we send a police officer there and the dog's gone, there's
Yeah.
nothing he can do.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And it's the same with code enforcement. We can go talk to them, which we have, we've talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we put signs up and,
Yeah, that was true, and that has helped, definitely. It has helped.
but
Currently, how does the process work, like with code enforcement? Is someone calling here and telling you, hey, send a
No.
sheriff out, or
not necessarily.
how does it work?
We've tried to be more of a proactive code enforcement rather than, because a lot of times, people don't wanna rat their neighbor out, okay?
Right.
Even though their neighbor's violating the code, they don't wanna rat them out. So a lot of times it's, like yesterday, I caught a guy on 7th Street with the contractor working on his house. right around the curve there, 7th and Harbor. And, you know, I went over there and I told the guy he needs to leave, and he did, you know, but it's education, you know, and at times when I go through the city, even the code enforcement guy, you'll find a guy here and there, but on a Sunday, a homeowner can do it, but a contractor can't.
Is the police force doing it?
If they
If they
can, if they
'Cause
see
we had a
it,
neighbor who had a trailer parked in their driveway for about 16 hours, but they got a notice on their
Right.
door.
yeah.
But you're allowed 3 days, so I don't know if it's,
Well, no, you're not allowed overnight unless it's behind. Are you talking about an RV?
a boat.
No, it's gotta be
Gotta get a
behind. It's gotta be behind the front of the house.
I thought for 3 days it could be in their
No.
driveway.
No,
Well,
not,
if
if
you
you
get a
get
This
a,
is loading and
if
unloading
you get
though.
a permit from the city, but just to park it there, and we have people doing that. Actually, there's a house, I think it's
Yeah.
next door to you, Glenn.
It's a corner, 2 down.
Yeah,
He puts the boat out there frequently.
yeah, and we have to, you know, it's becoming the point that, guess what's gonna happen to him? He's gonna get a $166 ticket. Because
Yeah.
you can't, it's kinda like the short-term rentals. You know, I'm looking at, and I've talked to the attorney about increasing the charge when it's 4 or 5 times, because I got a house that's 4 or 5 times. Well, the magistrate will fine them $1,000, but,
Then it's a matter of collecting it.
well, you put a lien on their house.
Well, yeah.
And eventually they'll sell their house and then the city will get their money, but the point being, if you do it, that $1,000 is the cost of doing business when you're getting $800 a day. So, does that fee need to be on the second time $2,500 and the next time $5,000?
It should be
Absolutely,
incrementally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
So,
for the neighbor's sake, it's not, you know,
yeah,
who
yeah.
cares if the city gets their money, it's the guy that lives next door.
Right. Well, Miami's got a good one there, it's 20, first time,
First time.
$20,000.
Lynn, a question on the cash and investments, CDs, money markets, et cetera. Do we have someone who takes a look at that periodically to see if they're invested in?
Traditionally, it was
Invest who?
done by our treasurer.
By the treasurer.
That, well,
Okay.
Melanie previously.
Mhm.
We haven't talked to anybody from the outside to look and see if we can do something better, but we may need to do that because now our situation is a little different. We have a contractor type treasurer that's, but we, you know, him and I do look at the rates, but right now, the rates for our CDs are coming in at like 163, but we're short term.
Is the scope of his role of that contractor role really just debits and credits and accounting?
Yeah, for the most part. So we're gonna look at maybe talking to someone and seeing what kind of cost that would be. I know I've talked to some other cities. They've talked about it, but they haven't done it. You know, Beller Bluffs, they've talked about hiring a money manager to see if they can get a little more return. SBA, which is very liquid, we're getting 1.83, I think it is, which
Standard,
is,
pretty much.
but that's not a CD, that's a liquid account. I can go in there tomorrow and transfer money if I needed it. So I'm actually getting better from them than.
What's their insurance?
Huh?
What's their, how are they insured? Well, they collateralize.
Their states, yeah.
The state collateralizes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so, you know, it isn't a CD that locks us in for 6 months or 12 months. It's an interest rate that's right now 2/10 higher than what we're getting from 6-month notes. I mean, probably Ron could tell you what the notes are at his bank are for CDs.
I'd like them to be lower. We want to make money when we lend money.
They're already zero, aren't they?
Yeah,
Well, they're probably in that range too, aren't
right.
they?
Yeah, no,
1.6.
they are. It's-
Yeah.
This was a big marketing thing at the Florida League of Cities stuff. I mean, they kind of like to advertise, keep throwing it out there. Hey, you know, we
SBA.
have short-term liquid kind of
The SBA one?
investments for municipalities to keep money in, and we offer competitive rates or whatever. so they-
Well, the SBA is,
Yeah.
you know, it is a better rate.
You know,
and
you look at it, I mean, they're probably rated better than some banks. If they're, you know, Moody's that's rated, you know,
Yeah.
AAA, that's better than most
But I think
banks
the
today.
Florida League of Cities has a team that will help direct us where to invest that money. So it's a
Maybe
simple
leverage.
call, so that might be, you know,
Yeah.
something, a task force for you guys to look at or something, or, you know, or come up with a solution, because right now, that's always been a sticking point for me, we've never had, and I don't think anyone managing our money well. And I don't know if it's getting a money manager or working with the Florida League of Cities, so.
Well, and using the formula, they would guide, you know, what's the right amount of liquidity we should have based on any kind of future debt we want. And so it's probably important to make sure what our liquidity availability is, what our untapped borrowing capacity is, with our millage rates. And so there's probably a whole scenario we need to get from them.
I believe they actually had someone that said they would participate in these meetings with you guys too, to help get some ideas
Yeah, I think,
when I spoke to them.
Yeah, that's who we went through to get the undergrounding money. We went through the Florida League of Cities to get the funding.
yeah, things that have to go to the city, if we were to further consider, the council were to consider a bond type issue, that has to obviously go to the citizens, right, for approval, and what percentage turn out in favor? I mean, if we're a city of approximately 1,700 residents, correct?
1566.
1566, so does there have to be a percentage of voter turnout in order for that to be a valid bond?
No, it just has to be.
Majority voted, whatever.
Majority,
Whatever it is, okay. A simple minority, or majority rather?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
With that in mind, you have to think about the same thing we're talking about with charter, is when you could get that to vote. If that's, so there has to be a timeline for that.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Well, because it's got to be approved
Put on-
by city council, then you've got all the issues with the county, and the state, and then it has to also back into the timing on the ballot.
Right.
Which would be November, so then back
Yeah.
down from then.
Okay, right. Okay. All right. Anything
Maybe
else?
that's, Ron, if I may, maybe that, Rick, that's something that we might want to consider sooner than later because of the time frame. If we're looking, if it's got to go to the voters,
Right,
because like they're saying, you know, you start with the election and then you got to back up
Yeah.
for the drop dead date to get all your ducks in a row
yeah,
for it to get on the ballot. I know I keep hearing that from council
Mhm.
members and the mayor at the meetings, you know.
Yeah.
I think you gotta, I don't
Yeah.
know that all of that has to go. I think the
Okay.
council has the authority to approve, but
part of that, okay.
I'll dig into that a little
Okay.
more. I think I don't know that everything technically goes, just, you know, a good example, this building loan, or the undergrounding, that didn't go to anybody.
That's true.
You're right.
So it's just council.
Yeah.
Okay,
No?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't think there's any, I'm trying to remember if there's anything in the charter that says a dollar amount or anything, but I don't recollect that, but
okay.
I could be wrong.
What was the original fund borrowing? Was it 4 million
For what?
for this building?
Three. Yeah,
Is it still with SunTrust too?
Yeah, and, you know, a lot of people don't realize it, but we made a lot of money on that $3 million too.
There was a big arbitrage early on.
Did.
Yeah. Cause we took the money
Yeah,
and it was during a construction project and the interest rates were great and we invested it. We made
Okay.
a good chunk of, the
Made it.
city made a good chunk of change on that money.
Oh.
So, you know, I don't think people,
Makes the interest
So
Really?
quite
this,
as painful.
the same thing would happen with a
Yeah.
bond issue for your stormwater improvements, that you collect the bond money and then you dole it out as you need it. Do you have an idea how long it takes, if you did everything on here,
that's
a year, 2 years, 3
probably
years?
2, 3.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, you know, it's kind of like the undergrounding project. We took out a note for, the total was gonna be 2.2, but we subtracted the 3, I think we got 300 and some thousand that prepaid. So we subtracted that back, and I think the end loan was like 1.8 total. And we're gonna have some savings in that project that we're gonna pay the loan down, and then we work the loan out where they re-amortize it. So,
What about those that paid?
well, for you, we'll probably keep your money, but
Just fix the damn
Goes
light.
in the
You just put it in front of the
general
driveway.
fund.
I read the light only works Monday through Thursday.
that's because of all them Christmas lights you
Oh,
have.
they're down.
We'll put in an extra light that works on the weekends.
Yeah,
They're coming back Monday, so they were supposed to be here today, but it's a week late. But, no, so what we'll do with that is any excess funds from the project will, the people that prepaid will get some money back.
Get some money
The
back.
people that are in an assessment, we will just repay the loan and reduce their assessment.
and reduce their assessment, okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna give them something we don't have.
Sure.
So, then they'll re-amortize that, so the assessments will go down.
Okay. All right, so I think we've certainly covered 5. Number 6, I put down there identification of appropriate course for a committee is determined by the charter. Speaking for myself, if you will, I've learned a lot, and I think that I'm prepared to come back in a couple weeks when we next meet and put some things maybe down in writing as to ways, because I think we are, speak for myself, I understand the magnitude of what we're looking at better, a better idea where the income sources may be. And would that be a fair way to move forward, to come back? When are we scheduled to meet again? Rebecca?
22nd.
22nd.
Same time, same place, right? Okay. So I might suggest you look at this charter. Again, we've covered a lot of the areas. I think we've found that we've addressed a few of them superficially, but they may not need to be addressed in a more deep manner. So,
Yeah, on the marina revenues, how much we charge a foot, is that comparable to what the marinas charge?
It depends what marina you go to, they're all over the board, we've done studies on them, and they're kind of mixed, you know.
yeah.
You might get a little bit, but it's not, I mean, the marina profit each year is about $43,000. That's what we get, somewhere in that range.
And what's our expenses for?
That's the net after everything's collected. There is a section,
I saw 43 in the budget.
I think it's 43, I might be off $1 or $2.
The budget was 41,459.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, we've looked at those marina fees locally for 2 or 3 times in the last year and a half. They haven't budged much as far as other marinas. And you have to look at what we provide. Some marinas, they
Yeah, there's
meter
no-
every boat slip
Yeah.
and they charge. submarine is included.
There are no amenities, there's no fuel, there's no, I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
spot, so.
But at 6% cap on that money, maybe that's that's 700 grand in value.
But have you ever thought of like maybe fencing off a portion of that parking lot that's never used and allow it for some boat storage or something like that? I mean, I know it could be an eyesore, but you could screen it pretty well and for
Well,
for residents. I'm not talking
I'll
about-
tell you something. I've thought about that. I don't know how to go over, but I've thought about it. I've thought
I
about
can tell you, there's go down.
RV storage.
And
boat storage.
One after another in Walsingham, and they're full, and the minimum is $100 a month
What?
for
Just
a
for-
parking spot.
Oh, for a parking spot, yeah.
Yeah, so,
A
No.
boat parking spot or a car park?
Boat parking spot,
Or an
either, whatever you wanna
RV,
park.
whatever you wanna park.
But I'm just saying that depends
You wanna
on the
park a
size of the
motorcycle?
vehicle.
Still $100, no.
But I mean, I think you could screen it and you could do, and just use it for residents, just an added benefit. Or even the residents that are bringing their boats home on the weekends, you know, that sort of thing that are.
I'm
you
sure
know,
I could,
Rod's neighbor that has his boat trailer parked in the front yard, could use it.
I had one
I
of
actually
those,
had one of our residents.
I had one of those in St. Louis that I made a lot of money at.
Mhm.
Of course, it was an old military base that was given to the city, and I had hangars, so I had indoor storage, and I had fence storage, and
Yeah,
it was full.
yeah.
But we have a lot of issues with residents and their RVs and boats.
So, I mean, it might be.
How much space is
something-
available after the 70 car spots?
Well, it's debatable what the 70 spots are. I mean,
So
I could
there's-
make a
70
case.
spots in there?
Well, there's more than that technically.
Okay.
It's just there has to be 70 spots dedicated to
Beach renourishment.
beach renourishment.
Yeah,
Depends how creative you are.
yeah, okay.
Do you have a 9-foot
Yeah.
parking space? Do you have a, you know,
So they're not curved. They're not curved.
There's nothing.
no,
It's just an open. field.
It's an open,
It's a parking lot for an old cop car, isn't it?
some
Yes.
days.
When you rent a slip there, do you get a parking spot too? I mean, is
Yeah.
there, yeah, okay.
Well, no, you don't get to live there.
No, but it's not.
There's no
You
overnight
just can
parking,
park
is there?
If you have a marina slip, yes, there is.
Oh,
Okay.
You can park
But
there
no one
overnight.
does, no, I never see anyone overnight.
No.
When they're-
Once in a while there is, but not very often. The only time that, once in a while, the condos are doing something on their driveway or something, and we let them park there overnight.
Well, we have a real parking issue in our condo, and I know Carol's approached you about, could we somehow buy spaces for overnight, not on a continual basis, but,
Yeah.
and she says you keep saying you're thinking about it, so.
Well, if you
Which is fine.
Bel Air Beach Tipper, you just park there, you're fine, right?
But not overnight.
Oh, not overnight.
Not overnight.
No, what they're talking about is,
Is renters,
Renters.
actually, who bring friends, who have cars, and we don't have the space for them, so.
that's weird.
That's the difference.
And we've talked about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'd rather not have the renters, so I have no sympathy for them, so.
So I would say, do we know enough to come back in 2 weeks and start writing
Week and a
some
half.
things down, and then we can really
I think so,
maybe go
right?
from there?
Yeah.
Ron, what do you think?
Yeah.
And prioritize, and I think
And
we
if
got
you need
a lot
anything,
done, thank you.
just send an email, we'll
Yeah.
try to find
Right.
out, you know, I know John sent me an email,
Right.
and we'll get
Yeah.
that to you.
Oh, I don't, I probably don't need the balance sheets. You've given me everything, and now that I know that the cash amounts are what I'd see on the balance sheet, don't do anymore.
The audits are always on the line.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, we're
Oh.
going through our audit
Okay.
right now.
Yeah.
For last year.
Yeah.
And the CAFR, that audit report from the previous year is online. But if there's anything you need,
Sure.
just ask us, we'll try to find it.
Okay.
There's a couple items I will get with you at a time of your convenience before the next meeting, I don't think about.
Yeah,
Thank you to our residents, and thank you to our
Yeah.
city council members for being here. And Lynn, thank you for all you do.
Yes.
And your guidance and your knowledge is awesome. We appreciate it.
Very much
Do
so.
we have any open items, anything go by the list? A motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion. To adjourn.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.